Nothing at all, nothing redeemable in him. And we have to, and whoever the people are who want to vote for him, and there look like intelligent people around there, somebody, for some reason, it can't be. It cannot be. If he wins the election, you won't be on the show anymore. He'll come looking for me. There'll be things that happen that none of us can imagine. That's what happens in that kind of a dictatorship, which is what he says. Let's believe him, take him at his word.
Do you think our democracy is at risk in this election?
I think that it is. I always keep saying democracy is great, of course. But democracy people take for granted. It's a word that some people don't even understand. They take it for granted. It's about right and wrong, period. The guy's a monster. He is beyond wrong. It's almost like he wants to do the most horrible things that he can think of in order to get a rise out of us. I don't know what it is, but he's been doing it, and it's scary.
Are you
Excuse my French.
Not long ago, Robert De Niro appeared completely overtaken by what many refer to as Trump derangement syndrome, moving from one interview to the next, making intense declarations and attaching extreme labels to the Republican frontrunner. He characterized Trump in the most alarming terms, presenting himself as a guardian of democratic values. But here's the catch. It increasingly resembled the kind of hypocrisy Hollywood is often accused of. And Bill Maher had absolutely no problem saying so publicly. If you enjoy sharp political takes and the commentary the mainstream tends to sidestep, hit subscribe so you never miss what's coming up next.
Mine is, it's Biden versus Trump. We want to live in a world that we want to live in and enjoy living in, or live in a nightmare. Vote for Trump and you'll get the nightmare. Vote for Biden and we'll be back to normalcy.
Yeah. So why is Trump winning? I mean, the New York Times poll this week came out, and maybe this will change it with the State of the Union address, but Trump was beating him rather soundly. It was quite a warning light, 48-43, also winning way more among women than he had before, winning outright Latinos. What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I just don't want to feel the way I did, and many of us don't, after the election in 2016, where we couldn't believe that it happened.
You see what people call Trump derangement syndrome actually does to a person. It gradually distorts judgment, reasoning, and even a basic grasp of reality. Look at Robert De Niro. He had an entire list of reasons why people should avoid voting for Trump, yet he couldn't explain why tens of millions of Americans, including a notably high number of women, wanted him back in the White House. That's exactly the kind of blind spot this way of thinking produces. And for those still clinging to the notion that Trump would have lost if Joe Biden had been mentally sharper, it's worth stepping back. Pre-election surveys were already showing Trump gaining significant momentum, and not by a narrow gap. The indicators were visible, and those in positions of power could read them clearly. That's why, behind closed doors, the strategy began to shift. Rather than risking a head-to-head matchup, attention turned elsewhere. Kamala Harris began surfacing as the backup plan, with a deliberate effort to reshape the approach. If you've been noticing all of this, you're not imagining it. You're simply starting to pay closer attention.
Total monster. And anybody, I don't understand it. I guess they get behind that kind of logic. They want to fuck with people, screw them, because they're unhappy about something. He's such a mean, nasty, hateful person. I'd never play him as an actor, because I can't see any good in him. Nothing.
Let me pause here for just a moment, because I may have glossed over something. Did Robert De Niro actually say he would refuse to portray Donald Trump if he were ever approached? First of all, who's even asking? Why would anyone cast him in that role when there's virtually no physical resemblance to speak of? That's like casting Danny DeVito to play LeBron James. It simply doesn't add up. And let's be honest, De Niro is not the only major actor in Hollywood. This isn't some grand, principled stance. It comes across more like making a fuss over something that was never even being considered. At best, it's mildly amusing. At worst, it feels like unnecessary posturing. Anyway, let's move forward to the part where he starts making some very bold predictions.
In him. And we have to, and whoever the people are who want to vote for him, and there look like intelligent people around there. Somebody, for some reason, it can't be. It cannot be. If he wins the election, you won't be on the show anymore. He'll come looking for me. There'll be things that happen that none of us can imagine. That's what happens in that kind of a dictatorship, which is what he says. Let's believe him. Take him at his word.
This is where things get truly interesting. Donald Trump has now been back in office for several months. And honestly, how many of Robert De Niro's sweeping apocalyptic forecasts have actually materialized? None. Not even remotely. But here's what has actually happened. Trump has made some genuinely unexpected moves, including extending an invitation to one of his sharpest critics, Bill Maher, to visit the White House. Yes, that same Bill Maher, the openly liberal commentator who spent years championing left-leaning causes and firing shots at Republicans. And yet, not a single Democratic president ever extended him that level of access. Not Barack Obama, not Bill Clinton, not even Joe Biden. But Trump did. Why? Because unlike so many of his detractors, Trump leans directly into confrontation. He doesn't retreat from opposing voices or play it safe with scripted appearances. He walks straight into the friction, and that's a big part of what makes him so unpredictable and, in certain respects, effective. So sure, De Niro may have been right about one thing. Trump has indeed done some surprising things, just not the ones he and much of Hollywood had been warning everyone about.
Our democracy is at risk in this election?
I think that it is. I always keep saying democracy is great, of course. But democracy people take for granted. It's a word that some people don't even understand. They take it for granted. It's about right and wrong, period. The guy's a monster. He is beyond wrong. It's almost like he wants to do the most horrible things that he can think of in order to get a rise out of us. I don't know what it is, but he's been doing it, and it's scary.
Are you
Excuse my French.
At this stage, it's becoming fairly evident that Robert De Niro rarely ventures beyond his comfort zone of acting and criticizing Donald Trump. Just listen to how he attempts to explain democracy. He opens by suggesting most people don't truly understand it, then delivers a definition that feels overly basic and somewhat shallow. It sounds confident, but it's not particularly persuasive. And honestly, it fits a larger pattern that many people associate with certain corners of Hollywood. Strong opinions expressed loudly, but sometimes completely out of step with how the rest of the country sees things. There's a sense of an echo chamber where specific viewpoints get constantly reinforced and opposing perspectives rarely get breathing room. Big declarations about values like democracy and openness sound admirable, but critics argue they don't always match the way disagreements actually get handled. And De Niro is far from alone in this. He's simply one of the louder voices within a much bigger group that many view as disconnected from everyday life. Meanwhile, a growing number of people are beginning to question whether these public figures genuinely reflect the broader public at all.
Totally dumbfounded, baffled by that. I can't understand it. And it's a thing that we've seen over decades and decades. And he's a what's it, Tammy Faye and the other one?
Yes.
It's the same thing, give us your money, we're going to save you. Yeah, televangelist. It's just the same.
Robert De Niro didn't limit his criticism to Donald Trump alone. He also directed his fire at the people who voted for him. At one point, he implied that many supporters had been deceived, describing them in terms that came across as condescending and unnecessarily harsh. That kind of language doesn't land well with a lot of people. It feels less like reasoned debate and more like talking down to ordinary Americans. And that's precisely where the backlash begins. Because the irony, according to critics, is that while accusing others of being easily misled, De Niro appears to be repeating the same talking points heard across late-night television and activist-aligned media, presenting them as if they were unquestionable facts. To many, that doesn't resemble independent thought. It looks more like simply going along with the prevailing crowd. He may consider himself well-informed, but plenty of people would argue that echoing the same narrative doesn't automatically mean someone is right. And that's a major reason why more and more people are beginning to tune celebrities out entirely. There's a growing sense of frustration with being lectured by wealthy public figures who appear completely disconnected from the realities of everyday life. Fame and wisdom are not the same thing, and a growing number of viewers are starting to recognize that clearly. And then came a moment that truly brought that tension to the surface, when De Niro had a face-to-face encounter with a Trump supporter on the streets of New York. Let's just say it didn't remain composed for very long.
Favorite president, I forgive you, Bobby, for being such a loser about the election. It's not your fault you were born with a low IQ. It's not your fault, Bobby. Believe me. Bobby, your favorite president won. Kamala lost. She lost so strongly. You were wrong. You're a loser. You're a total loser. This show sucks. You're gonna get low.
But seriously, what exactly gives Robert De Niro the authority to tell the rest of the country who they should or shouldn't be voting for? He exists inside a Hollywood bubble, completely shielded from the daily struggles that most Americans actually live with. While families were dealing with skyrocketing gas prices, grocery bills that kept climbing, and paychecks that barely covered the basics under Joe Biden, De Niro was sitting comfortably in his multi-million-dollar home, far removed from that reality. He never felt that pressure. He never had to choose between covering rent and putting food on the table. So when he lectures Americans for supporting Donald Trump, it comes across as elitist and completely tone-deaf. Of course he's entitled to dislike Trump. That's entirely his prerogative. But that doesn't grant him any moral authority to demean millions of hard-working citizens for exercising their democratic right to vote for a leader they believe actually hears them.
Tonight about the Biden inner circle's efforts to hide his decline, including a scene in which the campaign staged a fake town hall. Why? Well, to quell concerns about his age and ability to interact with.
Meanwhile, the very same Democrats Robert De Niro was so eager to defend and keep in power were busy staging town halls and heavily rehearsed events just to prop up their faltering candidate, Joe Biden. Think about that for a moment. This is the party De Niro was urging Americans to support without question. A party so unwilling to face reality that they couldn't even be transparent about Biden's unmistakable cognitive decline. Rather than confronting it directly, they buried it. They scaled back his public appearances, shielded him from challenging interviews, and fed the press carefully crafted talking points designed to conceal what was plainly visible to anyone watching. Now the truth is beginning to surface. A new book by Jake Tapper promises to lay bare the full scope of Biden's mental struggles and the turmoil it unleashed within the DNC. The cover-up is beginning to unravel, and it's far more troubling than the public was ever led to believe.
Fake town halls. Now, I would say those town halls usually are in addition to real town halls. Joe Biden was doing neither. This fake town hall was in order to film it so they could make it into campaign commercials. They filmed it in Delaware with supporters. But Joe Biden, at this point, this is the spring of 2024, Joe Biden's town hall, which was closed to press, was so bad that campaign officials determined that it was not usable for a campaign commercial. So they took 90 minutes, 2 hours out of the president's day, they filmed an entire town hall, and they determined that it was not.
And yes, that's just how serious Joe Biden's cognitive decline had become. Even with a fully scripted town hall, a hand-selected audience, and every detail engineered to project an image of steadiness and control, he still couldn't hold it together. The questions were predetermined, the answers prepared in advance, and everything from the lighting to the camera placement was carefully managed. Yet none of it could mask the truth. Biden stumbled through his lines, wandered off topic, and fell into those now familiar moments that leave viewers visibly stunned. You can almost picture it clearly, mid-sentence, attempting to answer a straightforward question, then suddenly drifting off, uttering something incoherent, and reaching out to shake hands with empty air. It's almost darkly absurd if it weren't so genuinely alarming. This goes beyond politics at this point. It's about leadership and whether the person standing at that podium even has a clear sense of where he is.
This was because Joe Biden was incoherent. He could not really articulate his thoughts in a pithy or even semi-normal way. Some people just said like the lighting was bad. That was sort of the two points of view. But the point is, it shows how like what the campaign status was in the spring of 2024 when they were trying to, deal with a candidate that wasn't a.
But the real question worth asking is why now? Why did Jake Tapper suddenly choose this moment to write a book exposing Joe Biden's mental decline? What's the actual motivation behind it? Biden's struggles were never truly hidden. Anyone paying attention could see them plainly. The repeated slip-ups, the vacant stares, the whispered confusion. It was all right there for anyone willing to look. Yet for years, the media, Tapper included, danced carefully around it, minimized it, or simply looked the other way. Meanwhile, Democrats kept their heads buried, insisting everything was fine as long as it kept their party's grip on power intact. And now that the polls are turning and the narrative is shifting, suddenly a tell-all book appears. It has all the hallmarks of political damage control. Far too little, far too late. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed our take, hit that like button and subscribe for more commentary just like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.